Am I about to get... No, it's not worth it. It's not worth getting rid of Twisted Fate for a 1-1. Uh... Hey everyone, Raptorspank here, and today we have another episode of On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. I'll break down the deck, a couple of flex spots, and some basic mulligans. Then we'll put the deck through some matches and review how we did afterwards. So today we're going to be covering something a little bit spicier because I just couldn't resist. Fizz is... This is probably the most meta or competitive Fizz has ever been. So I just couldn't help but cover that deck. So we are covering Bilgewater Piltover Fizzlusives. This deck has been popping up quite a lot lately, and at first I kind of wrote it off as a deck that I didn't think was quite good enough. I figured other aggro decks were a little bit better, and I was very surprised by how well this deck has done. So this, for people unfamiliar, this is the kind of new shell of the Fizzlusives package. It's a deck that's been around every so often. It's changed regions a couple of times. I've shown it with Targon a few times, but lately a couple of additions in this patch has really pushed it to the Piltover side with new cards like Ballistic Bot and Poro Cannon came a little bit earlier, but now we have Iterative Improvement as well. It's basically just an aggro deck that revolves around very aggressive elusives. It has a couple of backup conditions as well with Twisted Fate and a lot of card draw, but it's pretty similar in theory to the elusive decks of old, where you're just trying to win by having a bunch of elusives and your opponent not having them. So let's talk about the deck in a little more detail. First off, we have 3 copies of Fizz. This is just a very aggressive and very threatening elusive threat, essentially. For 1 mana, it's only a 2-1, but anytime you cast a spell, and we have a ton of spells on the deck, he's going to gain elusive. And once you've cast 6 spells, he'll level up, and then anytime he hits your opponent, you're going to create create a spell that creates a shark and makes things vulnerable, and the shark has overwhelm, so that's really, really strong. The big important part here is he's also an elusive threat that's very hard to deal with, because any targeted removal will get countered if you cast a spell. So burst speed spells, really effective in this deck, not just for turning on elusive for Fizz, but also preventing your opponent's removal from hitting Fizz. Board wipes will still get him, but essentially that's what you have to play around, is that any spell you have, or leaving up a spell, will allow you to counter any targeted removal from your opponent. So he's just a really great, really early elusive threat that just runs down your opponent very quickly. And his champion spell's actually not awful in the deck. You're still not going to cast it often, but rallying, removing one thing from combat and rallying can be very, very effective for running down an opponent faster than they expect. You can always swing with your full elusives and then one other unit, then pull that one unit out and rally and get another swing of elusives that your opponent still probably can't block. So that's a very effective way for killing your opponent out of nowhere when they least expect it. You're not going to do it often, but it's definitely something you can consider. Now, a backup win condition, if you want to call it that, of the deck is Twisted Fate, which we have 3 copies of him as well. We have a lot of card draw in the deck, and drawing cards is really good for us because there's a lot of cards that benefit from drawing cards, or a lot of low costs that are going to just let us play out a ton of cards in one turn, or things that benefit from casting multiple spells. And then Twisted Fate also allows us to deal with decks that are going to be faster than us by using red card as a board wipe, or using gold card to stun a huge overwhelmer, something like that. It's just all around a great utility card in the deck, and sort of a backup win condition. You're not usually going to win the game because of Twisted Fate, but it essentially creates another threat that your opponent has to deal with, and that ends up pulling their removal away from more important cards like your flyers. So that's basically what he does in the deck. His champion spell, pick a card. That card, we already have copies of it in our deck, so even more copies of it by having multiples, perfectly fine with us. So we have so many ways to level him up, and his champion spell helps level him up. He's just another great backup card that, if our opponent can't deal with it, is going to really cause problems for them in the long run. But now let's talk about the followers. First off, we have 2 copies of Jagged Butcher. This is just a great, cost-effective 1-drop. We just want to make sure we have a lot of turn 1 plays. So by running 2 Jagged Butchers, we have 8 turn 1 plays, which means that statistically speaking, we should have 1 in our opening hand, but obviously that won't always be the case. But this is just another really great one drop, super aggressive, try to start pressuring our opponent quickly. And we can often trigger Plunder, so he's decent in the mid game as well by just being a 1-mana 3/3. Then we have 3 copies of Pool Shark. This is part of our draw engine. It lets us pull a bunch of cards. We have a lot of ways to benefit from those cards. Even if you pull like a turn 2 Twist of Fate, we have a lot of cards like Rummage or Poro Cannon that can at least get some value out of it, even if it's not ideal. So it's just a great card any point in the game, more or less. Sometimes we'll even copy this card just to get even more card draw, so it's just a really great value one-drop that can be very good for slowing down other aggro decks, as well as just drawing towards our more important cards. Then we have 3 copies of Ballistic Bot. Another high-value card. It's a 1/3. It will survive a lot of things. It can block fairly well. It'll do a ton of damage very quickly if your opponent's not careful. And it gives us Ignition every turn, which is the big reason we're running this deck, because we have a lot of ways to benefit from that. We can use it with Pick a Card to shuffle it back into our deck and draw a bunch of new cards. We can use it with Rummage to draw more cards. We can use it with Get Excited to fire burn at our opponent. We can use it with Poro Cannon to get Poros and all that stuff. Or we could just cast it and deal a bunch of damage to our opponent's Nexus over the long run of the game. So it's just a good way to get those extra points of damage through, or just enable the rest of our deck's engine. And also we have a number of cards that care about how many spells you've cast, and this helps us pad that number very quickly, as well as enabling Elusive for Fizz. So it just does so many good things for the deck. And then we have 3 copies of Zap Sprayfin. This is just one of the best Bilgewater elusives, so there's no reason not to run them. It's not going to tutor us a card as it would in like a Go Hard deck, because we have so many hits, somewhere over 10 possible cards that this would pull for us. So it's not going to consistently get you a card, but it will get you some card that's going to probably be useful, and it's just going to be a decent elusive threat on its own, while also giving you more mana for spells. And that just makes it well worth it. I don't think I really need to explain at this point how valuable Zap Sprayfin is, but even in a deck like this where we're not going to hit a specific card off him, he's still super valuable. And then finally, rounding out our champion package is one of our Spells Matter cards, which is Wiggly Burblefish. This is the big addition to the deck that has kind of pushed it into the meta, is that this is a very cost-effective elusive threat. Yes, it only has 1 health, but with things like Iterative Improvement, we can get even more out of this card. But essentially, we're hoping to get its cost down to close to 0, or as close to 0 as possible. So that's very easy for us to do. As I mentioned, we have stuff like Ignition. We have a ton of spells in our spell package. All of these things help enable Fizz and level up Fizz, while also setting up for a very aggressive Wiggly Burblefish turn by playing a bunch of them, potentially. And they're all elusive, so that's just a really, really good threat. It's our highest damage elusive that we have, so very valuable card, does a lot for the deck. Now let's talk about the spell package. This is pretty weighty for an aggro deck. We have 3 copies of Poro Cannon. As I mentioned, we're an elusive deck, and we really like elusives, so as much as you might doubt it, these 1/1 Poros are actually very relevant to our deck, and often are our big win condition. And you'll see why. We have a number of ways to make these better than just 1/1s, and that is what really gets the value out of these cards. But they're just really great elusive flyers that can force damage through, and you can always use it to just get rid of 1 card and then make 2 cards. If you want to, say, use a Rummage, now you have 2 Poros to pitch. It just does a lot of things that are really great for the deck that are definitely not worth underselling. Then we have 3 copies of Rummage. Again, another great card. Helps to turbo level TF. This is 2 card draw for exactly 1 mana. That's some of the fastest TF level ups you'll see in the game. So it's very, very potent for that. But just in general, it makes sure that we keep our engine running. And we have a number of things like Pick a Card and Pool Shark that will put fleeting cards in our hand. This is a way to at least get some value out of them. If we're guaranteed to lose them, we could just pitch them to Rummage to draw 2 new cards. So it does a lot of good things for the deck. And at burst speed, it lets us enable Fizz and attack with them before our opponent can play anything. So that's really, really strong. Same goes with the next card, which is 3 copies of Iterative Improvement. Another great way of enabling Fizz. But also, it just does so many good things for our deck. We can copy any of our followers. We can copy another Ballistic Bot to get an even bigger one that's also generating more spells every turn. We can copy a Zap Sprayfin to find another spell out of our deck. We can copy a Wiggly Burblefish, so now it'll have more than 1 health, and it'll still cost 0. If we've cast enough spells at that point, we can copy a Pool Shark to draw more cards. It just has so much value for our deck. So that's really, really strong, and this is one of the cards I mentioned that you can play a Daring Poro and then Iterative Improvement it. A 2/2 Daring Poro doesn't sound like a lot, but I assure you it adds up very quickly. So that is a very legitimate play to go for at times. So this card just gives us so much value. Just keeps our hand full and keeps the elusive threats going even through removal. Next up, we have 3 copies of Mystic Shot, and this is where we start to get into our burn package, which is the big advantage this deck has over more traditional elusives like Ionia Freljord, is that they don't have burn. So they have a lot of pump spells and a lot of bigger elusives than we do, essentially. We can close out the game better because we have access to Mystic Shot and Get Excited and other burn spells just to deal damage straight to the Nexus, so we can deal a ton of damage and then use that to close out the game, which often will end up being fairly necessary, especially in the current meta. So that's a big advantage our deck has, and if we have to use it as removal, we can use it as removal. If they've got something we're not going to be able to deal with and it's going to cause a lot of problems, there we go. Or if we need to clear the way for an elusive, we can blast something with a Mystic Shot. Lots of uses for this card. Same goes for Get Excited. We only have 2 copies of this because we don't always want to be discarding cards. We definitely want to draw cards more than discard cards, but we have so many other outlets for discards, so you don't want a ton of outlets for it for this deck. So this is just here really as a catch-all for some bigger things that are going to be a problem, but also just a huge burn spell, or our biggest burn spell to kill our opponent if we need to close out that last few points of damage. As mentioned, 2 copies of Pick a Card. Great way to just keep drawing cards. We have a number of things that benefit from drawing cards, like Twist of Fate, or the next card I'll talk about, but basically this just keeps the engine running. We can usually cast most things we hit off this because our converted mana cost, or the total cost of our cards, is generally pretty low. So we can cast a lot of things off of this, even with fleeting, so we often won't lose cards for this. So it's usually just card advantage. But it's just a great way that you can sometimes use it too if you're going into a turn and you're like, well, I have no way to win here. So you just pick a card, shuffle whatever you've got back, and maybe you draw a bunch of burn spells and close out your opponent that way. Then we have 3 copies of Suit Up. This is probably one of the best cards in the deck, and the reason that Piltover is able to work as an elusive deck. Suit Up is insane. We have so much card draw, so we're often going to get this at a reduced cost, but even sometimes just casting at full 4 mana is still worth it for what it does. This can make our Daring Poros 4/4s. This can make our Fizz a 4/4, which means it'll probably survive board wipes better. We can use it on a Zap Sprayfin to make it a 4/4. We can even use it on a Wiggly Burblefish just to give it more health so it doesn't die to some removal. It just has so much good value for what we want to do, and you're almost always going to use it on Elusive because that's your highest value. I've probably used it on TF at least once or twice to either survive removal or because I swung to get them to block with something high value, and then I Suit Up to kill whatever they blocked with and not lose my TF. So that's another thing you can do. It's just an all-star card for the deck. So that's really, really strong. Definitely one of the best cards you can draw at most points in the game. It's bad on turn 1, obviously, but other than that, it's a very, very solid card. Finally, last spell, and definitely the most interesting card in the deck, and that is 1 copy of Mind Meld. I hem and hawed over this card. I thought, man, wouldn't it be better just to have a 3rd Jagged Butcher? Wouldn't it be better to have a 3rd Get Excited? This card is so insane. With so little Shadow Isles out there, you're not as scared of Ruination. Obviously, that's a matchup where you're not going to want this. But the big thing here is this wins some matchups so heavily. If you can build a big board of elusives and then cast this spell, you're going to have massive elusives. We cast so many spells. It's going to be huge. I had a game in which I had 5 units against Demacia, and they single combat one of my units in response to the spell, and I still dropped them to negative 44 with, or a little bit less than that, maybe negative 36. I hit them with 4 11/11s. That's really hard for most decks to deal with. So Mind Meld can steal you some games out of nowhere. It's insanely powerful in the right matchup, but there are many ways it can go wrong, which is why we're only running 1 copy of it, but it's definitely worth it, particularly for Demacia matchups. Now let's talk a little bit about flex spots. First up, when this deck first really emerged, or at least on my radar, instead of running Twisted Fate, people were running 3 copies of Teemo. This gives you another elusive threat that comes down on turn 1, so you've got that like guaranteed turn 1 playing something. And he's got the backup win condition of essentially burn through Mushroom Clouds. You can plant a bunch of Mushroom Clouds. If your opponent can't deal with Teemo, that's going to take over the game. I personally found that it didn't work quite as well for me as the Twisted Fate versions did, so I've chosen to go with Twisted Fate, but this is a legitimate thing to consider because, again, it's a nice elusive threat, and it generates a lot of direct nexus damage from his mushrooms as well. So it does kind of create that more roundness to the deck, but I personally find that since there are a number of aggro decks out there that can beat us, Twisted Fate is a great answer to that, and Teemo is not. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but if you like that or you really like Teemo, that's another way to go. For units, a big thing that I see a lot of people do is a lot of people are running Zonite Urchin instead of Jagged Butcher. I personally prefer Butcher for the super aggressive aspect of it. And again, as I mentioned, we aren't necessarily a discard deck. We don't really want to be discarding cards a lot. We have a lot of things that do discard cards, but we're usually doing that to salvage fleeting cards or get some value out of them. Or in the case of Poro Cannon, the threat it presents is just worth so much more than anything else. Zonite Urcha, on the other hand, we don't always want to be drawing cards. Especially on turn 1 like that, we're going to lose a card, but then you could draw like a suit up and lose the value out of it. So personally, I find Jagged Butcher a better one-drop just for a very simple, easy aggression that's not going to lose you a card, and it's not going to possibly waste a draw effect. So that's my personal preference. The important difference between that and Pool Shark is that Zonite Urchin is going to draw you it on turn 1, whereas Pool Shark is going to draw it on turn 2, which if you draw Suit Up, means you can still cast Suit Up. Now, suiting up a Pool Shark is not usually good, but there are some matchups where that would matter. So that's my personal preference on it. Another thing I've seen, and this one I'm much more interested to try out myself, and I'm definitely going to give it more of a look, but that's Neandroid. I've seen a number of people running anywhere from 1 to 3 copies. Usually it ends up being a 1-of. It's kind of low power output on its own, but we have a ton of ways to make cards in our hand, from Daring Poro or Poro Cannon making Daring Poros to Ballistic Bots making Ignitions, or even Fizz creating Chum the Waters if you can level them up. All of those cards, casting them, will power up Neandroid, and it already has 3 health, which makes it kind of hard to kill, so it can actually take over the game fairly quickly, fairly well. So it's definitely a card to consider. I could definitely see me going down like maybe a Get Excited or something like that for a 1-of Neandroid. So that's something to keep in mind. Another great augment card, benefit from a lot of the stuff we're doing, and it's a great elusive threat. And then finally for followers, I've seen some people run a 1-of Citrus Courier. Similar effect to what I mentioned with Fizz's Champion spell. Rally effects are really good with elusives. I have banged this drum a number of times when I've talked about Fizz elusives. When I was playing Targon, I was usually running a 1-of copy because the life gain can save you against burn, but the rally effect can just win the game because you get a huge swing with elusives, deal the damage, that triggers the plunder, you play the Citrus Courier, swing again with a bunch of elusives they can't block. Most people will die to that. So that's another thing you can consider. Personally, I don't like it because its body isn't great on its own. It's almost never going to get through your opponent, and it's very expensive at 6 mana. I'd almost rather run the Fizz spell to get an extra attack in, and I still wouldn't run that either. But it's definitely something to consider. The life gain does put it a little bit ahead of the Fizz rally spell because of the fact that that is a good answer for burn decks. And those decks can sometimes outrace us. They actually can quite often outrace us. So that's something to consider if you're running into that matchup a lot. And then a couple of spells you could change. A lot of people I've seen are running Aftershock. I'm not so sure I agree with this myself. Usually it ends up replacing the Get Exciteds. I've seen people run anywhere from 1 to 2. I've never seen 3, and I personally wouldn't recommend it. I get what people are trying to do with this card, and there's definitely an argument for it, but personally speaking, I think I'd rather have extra copies of Mind Meld than going Aftershock for like the Plaza Scouts version for dealing with Plaza. But Plaza can definitely be a potential problem for us because the best way to answer elusives is and has always been challengers that just force the elusives to fight and then it kills them. So Plaza is a good way for our opponent to do that. I think this is a concession by most people just to try and prevent that. But I have not personally had a lot of problems with that myself. And it's not going to be great in other matchups because a slow speed burn spell can often be a problem. But it is definitely a good card and one of the best spells you can consider bringing in. If you are seeing a lot of Plaza, it's a good answer for that. And you can always point at Nexus in the other matchups. Salvage is another card I've seen people run anywhere from 1 to 3 copies of. You could probably replace the Pika cards with this potentially. It won't draw you fleeting, so you get a little more value out of that, but it also won't draw you quite as many cards as Pick a Card does. But you don't have to give away a card either. So it's there's pros to both. So I could definitely see running either. I personally like Pick a Card because of the 1 mana less. And the fact that it draws you 3 cards and you usually put something back into your deck that you don't care about or that you're going to lose anyways to fleeting. Salvage, on the other hand, is just going to draw you 2 cards raw, so that's pretty strong. And adding that in addition to Pick a Card is going to be a lot harder to get away with, but you can go down, get excited to do that, and you're going to be a much better TF deck. But that's not really playing to what we're trying to do, so I don't personally run it. And finally, this is a really weird card to put on this list because I have considered this card absolutely terrible for a long time, but when this deck first emerged, most of the lists I saw people running were running 3 copies of Rising Spellforce. That seems wild to me, but there's a lot of cards that can pay off for it. 4 damage for 3 mana at burst speed is insane, especially with Fizz, because Fizz is often going to live because you have ways to counter anything that would kill him. You can get a lot of free damage through with this. I personally prefer the burn. I think it's a little more direct way of doing it, but you could definitely consider dropping like the Get Exciteds and maybe a Mystic Shot, or the Mind Meld for 3 copies of Rising Spellforce, or you could do like the 2 Get Exciteds for 2 Rising Forces. This is going to do a ton of damage when you catch your opponent sleeping, essentially. So that's something to consider. And those are just a couple of flex spots you can go with the deck, at least the most common I've been seeing from other people as well. So let's talk a little bit about basic mulligans. Most matchups you're going to want to be the aggro deck. There's a couple of times where maybe discard aggro, you're looking to be a little more mid-rangey because they're a bit faster than you, and Twisted Fate is really good in that matchup because of a red card. So you can go that route, but generally speaking, you're going to want to be the aggro deck, so you're going to look for the most aggressive hand you can have. A turn 1 Fizz is great into almost any matchup. Pool Shark can be really good into a number of matchups. Jagged Butcher's alright. Ballistic Bot's one of our best turn 2s, so that's really good to run as well. So going into aggro is where you're going to consider being a little more defensive. You can just try to run them down. Discard aggro is going to be a lot harder to do that too because they're going to have elusives as well through Daring Poros, so that's going to be hard to outrun them. Bright side is Twisted Fate's really good against them. Bilgewater Burn, that's where we're going to have a better time outrunning them. Not many people run Lounging Lizard in Bilgewater Burn like I do, and so most people are only going to have Zap Sprayfin to block. And if you time your suit-ups right, or just build a fast enough board, that's going to potentially beat them in the race. And you can also, if you get the right window, you can get a Mind Meld off into that matchup, and they're usually not going to have an answer. And that should be able to kill them in the right spot. I wouldn't necessarily count on it because it's a very expensive spell to run that, but that's one way to do it. Also, just in general for mulligans, never keep a suit up in your opening hand. Just don't. It's never worth it. You'd much rather draw it, so don't keep that. That's the only card that you're really like, can't keep this in opener, though. Mind Meld you usually don't want to keep in an opening hand, but for the mid-range matchups, Mind Meld's actually one of your best cards. So there you might actually want to keep it. I have run into Plaza Scouts twice with this deck, and I've won both times off of huge Mind Melds. I've been in positions where I'm like, I'm never going to win this game. And then I pull Mind Meld off the top. I'm like, oh my god, that's the one card that wins me this game. It is incredible how powerful it is against Plaza Scouts. So that's where you're looking for it in matchups like that. And again, against mid-range, you want a lot of elusives. This is where elusives matter the most, because there's chances are you're not going to be able to ever hit them on the ground. So look for elusives. Look for Mind Meld. Burn spells can help close the distance, but you kind of want to leave burn spells to be top decks as well as suit-ups. So just try to outvalue them and get them low enough quick that by the time they build a board state you can't survive, you just kill them. And against control, again, aggro. Go fast. Ballistic Bot's going to be great for constant burn damage. Fizz is going to be great for hitting a lot of their removal, although if they're a board wipe heavy deck, especially early board wipes like Avalanche, he's going to be a lot worse. But those are all good things. Mind Meld's going to be terrible. Just look to do as much damage as you can, and then use Get Excited and Mystic Shot to finish the job. Again, Ballistic Bot goes way up in priority, because especially if they can't find anything to block, it's going to deal a ton of damage, and just giving Ignition every turn is going to give you so much value. So that's what you're looking for in those general matchups. So that's the deck for this week's episode. If you like it, you think it looks interesting, there's a deck link and deck code in the description below. Now let's take it into some matches. All right, game 1 here at our quest to see if Fizzlusives can be competitive. This is gonna be a dicey one. Aggro matchups are a little bit scary. Oh, Twisted Fate is phenomenal here, though. I think we'll replace Rummage. Ballistic Bot can definitely be good here. And Twisted Fate is the best card we could possibly have. We're probably going to be a little more controlling. Okay, Mind Meld's almost certainly not going to happen. I mean, okay, I suppose there's... This will kill our opponent if we get it off. I don't think it's worth using Poro Cannon here just to block that. Oh, Jagged Butcher would have been good last turn. I would have traded a Butcher with that. Alright. Let's see if he goes straight to combat or if he, Ooh. So I can Ignition plus Jagged Butcher plus Mystic Shot, but that's probably too greedy. So I think we will Ballistic Bot, and then kill something? Yeah. So we can block here, Mystic Shot that. Ooh, Lord.
Now we're cooking.
Okay, well at least he doesn't have visions. Alright. Well, we're gonna lose our Ballistic Bot, unfortunately, but we'll take 4 and he's down to 3 cards. I think we Poro Cannon here just to get some value out of this Ignition. Unfortunate, though. This wasn't really the hand for Twisted Fate things. Can we still play Twisted Fate? Maybe it's better if we do Ignition plus Jagged Butcher. We can play out these Daring Poros as well. We'll have plenty of blockers. And we'll see what our opponent does. And I would definitely rather play Butcher double Poro than playing the Wiggly Burblefish. Mind Meld's not nearly potent enough yet. Now the downside here is that Twisted Fate isn't that good into this board state. Oh lord. Really? Okay. Well, I mean this is what his deck is designed to do, so we should expect some difficulties. Does he have Daring Poro and then something else? Oh lord! Wow! Triple Challenger. Yeah. Alright, so I mean we're almost certainly going to lose this game. You just don't win those games. I guess we full swing here, because the only way to lose these things is if he blocks with his 2 high values, and we would love to trade with his high values. Otherwise, we're just clearing some of his attackers out of the way. And that is more than fine with me. Alright. Well, let's see if he plays stuff next turn. We are in extraordinarily bad shape, though. So here's the thing. This doesn't actually do anything. Not really.
Keep up, keep up.
Ooh, that was one of the bad cards for us to draw. Yeah. I suppose if we can empty his hand, we're just dead, right? We might just be dead in general. Okay. He couldn't empty his hand. That's good to know. Can he? Yeah, that's a weird one. That is a weird one. Okay, so we gotta block here. Or else we're dead. Block here. I mean, he's dead anyways, right? Like, he's pretty much guaranteed dead anyways, so we might as well block to trade. Now, the problem is, killing this Jinx is going to be near impossible, and also we're in no position to actually win the game. Where we are right now. Now, he can make a missile. Okay. I mean, we're actually fine with that. I mean, by no means is this great for us, but... what can we do? So we have to kill this Jinx, right? That's our greatest threat right now. And we have to do it, like, next turn. Do I actually have the mana for that? Well, in theory, yes. Gold card the Jinx. The problem is I can't play this, too. Okay, that's another problem, but... Mind Meld isn't going to work here at this point. We just have to wrestle board control and hope that's enough. Alright, well he didn't get a missile this turn. Okay, can't attack. Because we need blockers.
Godasses need victims.
It's probably the best line of play. Alright. Let's see what we can find. Not really worth it. Just have to hope he doesn't have a decimate. Visions is not enough. But it's definitely close. Yeah. Alright. We're dead to many, many things. To very, very many things. I assume he doesn't have anything yet, but he could just be slow rolling it. But, like I said, aggro is our worst matchup, so... unsurprising that we're going to lose this one. Huh? That's not awful, I suppose. Yeah.
All that glitters.
What's he got? Okay. That's not that big a deal. But, I mean, we're so unlikely to win from here. Like, what could we hope that he draws? Alright, well, our best play is to not attack with anything. Oh, that drops us to 1. Okay.
Something the matter.
Block, block, block.
Where you going?
Go to 1. Alright, I mean, we're not winning this game, but we've bought ourselves a little bit of time. I'm trying to think what we could even do to win from here, and it's basically nothing. I mean, the chances that our opponent draws actual nothing is slim to none. They have so many different kill spells. Okay, well, we'll do this. Okay. Well, I mean, we'll kill a Draven if we can. But again, all he has to do is draw 1 burn spell. Any burn spell. Or Jinx. Yep. That's game. Well, those are the matchups that we are worst into, and that is actually the worst. Like, Bilgewater Burn is a little bit slower, but Discard Aggro, I mean, it depends on what they have, because Twisted Fate can be incredibly strong into the matchup, but our opponent didn't draw any of the cards that it's good against for the most part. I mean, he got the Daring Poros, but they came down so late, and then, as you saw, Jinx is something that we have no way to deal with. And that's always the thing with Discard Aggro. Either they don't have an answer for the Jinx and you win, or they have an answer for the Jinx and you lose. And unfortunately, our deck is not designed to deal with Jinx, and we were off to a fairly slow start. But yeah, on to the next. Alright. Interesting. Swain Victor. So this is going to be removal heavy, almost certainly. I'll pitch all 4 there. That hand doesn't do anything. Certainly not into this matchup either. Good chance we just want to go fast and try to run our opponent down. I mean, we'll see. He could be playing some variant of essentially Burn, but seems unlikely. Which, ooh, I actually do really like that. Less so now. Okay, we'll play Ballistic Bot. I will absolutely trade here if he goes for that. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I can really afford to go Ignition. Well, you know what? Let's do this. So this is a fair amount of damage. What is Victor's 4 mana? Okay. Okay. So, unfortunately, we can't attack with this Ballistic Bot, but we still should get the same amount of damage. Or actually more damage, because we got 2 instead of the alternative, which is not bad. That is also not bad. So I can do Iterative, Ignition, Suit Up. Okay, so if I do that, I guess we want a Poro? Our opponent might have a hard time dealing with Elusives at this point. It's hard to say. I think that's probably our best play. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we'll still do... Wait, let's see if he swings.
Who's gonna get in my way?
Okay. We'll take that hit. And then we will do this. Because this still has us dealing a fair amount of damage in the air. It's not really worth playing the Fizz first, right? Because even if I do, like, Suit Up for Fizz, like, this is going to block the Fizz. For sure. Death Hand? Mystic Shot. Okay, well, that does make this more beneficial. And he'll go down to 10, which is pretty good. Swain is still a fair bit away from leveling up. That said, I'm not confident that we'll actually be able to get away with that. And this will just kill us eventually, this Legion Grenadier, so we do have to be a little careful. I don't want to play this Fizz yet, because it'll just die. Yep, there's the Ravenous Flock. Kind of had a feeling he had something. That said, if he doesn't have many more iterative improvements, we could potentially just kill him. Ooh. Burn spell, surprisingly strong. Okay, so we do have to trade this now. I mean, how likely are we to die to out-of-hand burn? That is very unfortunate. Okay. Well, now if his Swain attacks, it dies. Now we want to shuffle this back in. Okay, so do that. Go down to 9. 9 we're not exactly likely to die out of hand. Okay. I think we want to shuffle now, though. That is a good way to give Fizz Elusive at burst speed so we can swing. But I don't think it's really in our best interest. Oh, that's perfect. Oh, that is phenomenal. Yeah, let's shuffle those away, draw some new cards. And go to combat. That has him to dead. Does he have an answer? And what is that answer? That drops him to dead. Assuming he can't kill me. In response, we have Mystic Shot plus Twisted Fate for 3. Okay. That still has our opponent dead before he can kill us. Actually, I'm 100% sure he's dead now.
Who says I don't share?
The beauty of going against Noxus Piltover is knowing that they don't have burn, or they don't have life gain in their deck. They do have burn. They have a lot of burn. Whew. Alright, there we go. We will take that. On to the next, I guess. Weird match, but we will take we'll take the free win, I guess. Dear Lord. This is 4 games in a row for me against Noxus Piltover, double discard aggro, a Victor Swain, and now Ezreal Draven. At least they are unique decks. This Fizz can definitely die on turn 1. If I keep Iterative, that can't actually work to save Fizz on turn 2. But Iterative could be really good in this match. Alright. Let's see what we pull. Let's see what our draw is, and that will decide if I play this Fizz or not. If we don't draw anything to give him Elusive, we're going to go Pool Shark instead. I don't expect my opponent to have a play this turn. That is so tragic on so many levels.
We playing bilge rules, son?
Watch, I'm going to draw a Twisted Fate. That's kind of bad too. Actually, Ballistic Bot's fine. Ballistic Bot's fine. Losing a Get Excited is very sad though. Let's see what he does. Okay. So if I play Ballistic Bot there, if he has a Get Excited or a Thermogenic, he just kills my Ballistic Bot. And I want to Ballistic Bot plus Iterative that Ballistic Bot. Okay. Now I could do Suit Up here, but that's not actually going to be good because he's still going to kill them. He just will have to burn a card, and that's not worth it.
Axes coming right up.
I think so. I wanted to Iterative Ballistic Bot, but I think now I can play this Fizz. I think we are perfectly fine playing Fizz. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to combat next turn. We're gonna Suit Up and leave Iterative up to protect him, assuming that I don't have to use Iterative right now. And it should be semi-difficult for them to kill a Fizz with Suit Up. Semi-difficult. They could deal some damage to it and then Scorched Earth. Wow. Okay. Interesting choice. I mean, obviously it's the right choice, but good of them to see that. Not everyone would. Oh, wow. Alrighty then. If I can help it, I'd like to not use this other Suit Up or lose this Pool Shark. We're going to play Ballistic Bot here. The goal is Ballistic Bot, with Iterative to copy Ballistic Bot. And Iterative on Ballistic Bot is really good because that extra health will be very hard for our opponent to deal with. Oh, perfect. I can chump block here. I mean, we're very much in the trying to outpace our opponent stage of the game, and we might be able to do that with what we've got here. Okay. I can actually Mystic, or I can get excited plus Zap, which might be my best play. Ooh, Lord. Okay, yeah, that is my best play for sure.
Can't say no to Fizz.
Yeah, because I can't take that big of a hit. Although my opponent is getting very low. Hang on. Let's think here. So that would drop us to 9. Now, if we get to swing on the... So we do one more down to 14. Then we get to hit for 8. Down to 16. With 4 points of... Or down to 6. With 4 points of burn available. Actually, the way he attacks, we do just chump block. We just chump block and we ignition. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hang on. No, never mind. He made this easy. He made this real easy. Yeah, so now we just ignition. We're very far ahead of him in tempo right now. So what we're going to do next turn is we're going to suit up this Zap and swing with both in the air. He shouldn't have an answer to that. Not at the speed he would need. Okay. Nope. That'll drop him to 6. We should be ahead of him now. So we could do 1 down to 5, and then iterative is probably our best play. Okay. We can survive through that. Drop him to 5. What is better, drawing cards or another ballistic bot? I think another ballistic bot. We'll see, though. I mean, if we need to draw cards, this rummage could be critical. Okay. I see what he's going for. And that's fine. Because our plan right now is to not have him live to our next turn. I was actually going to block with that Fizz if I had to. That's the joke. That's not enough damage. Okay, so we'll trade our board. We will absolutely trade our board right now. And then that has us down to 10. Let's see if he goes for max damage. Although, oh wait, he doesn't have... Those aren't axes, those are mushroom clouds. We're very much telegraphing to our opponent. I didn't even line up blocks right. We're telegraphing to our opponent that we have an answer. I think he's kind of picked up on that. Because obviously the best blocks have been flipping these two, but it really does not matter. He has no way to gain life in Noxus Piltover. That's the biggest problem with Ezreal Draven, is that at no point can you gain life. And so people know that, and they can punish that. So we know he can't gain life. So this is lethal here. I have the mana to cast all of this, and it will kill him. As long as he can't kill me first. And that will not do it. And there we go. We have it. Like I said, none of these matter. None of these need to live. Not a single one of these need to live. They cannot possibly matter less. We are all about burn right now. This is the reason we went for the double ballistic bot. The sad part is my opponent could have saved himself. He could have actually killed one of those ballistic bots because he had the Ravenous Flock. But he went for the Fizz, which, you know, I can't 100% fault him because Fizz is one of the scarier things. But, not actually what he needed to be worried about. Because we had everything else. We did not need Fizz to live, and this is why. Alright, well, there we go. Another Noxus Piltover deck, but we come out on top of this one too, so not bad at all. Alright, something different. But it is go hard mid-range. And that is not an ideal matchup for us. Poro Cannon could be good. What about Zap? Do I want Zap? I'm not even sure what's the... Oh, that's not it. I mean, this is it. Suit Up's really good. I was gonna say I'm not even sure what the way to win against this this deck is, and Suit Up actually is the answer, but not like that. Yeah, I think we block. Yeah, I mean this Pool Shark's never going to really be worth much, probably. They're gonna have lots of blockers for the ground. They're going to have blockers for Elusive, and that's the real bad for us thing. Okay. Well, let's play Pool Shark first. Although maybe we didn't want to play Pool Shark. Maybe that's actually bad. Man, it's so unlucky that we drew that when we did. I think we're still gonna play one of these anyways. He might have go hard and kill it. Okay, perfect. Oh right, we were supposed to attack that turn. Oof. You hate to see that. Also, you hate to see that. Man. Alright, well, this game is off to as bad a start as we could ever possibly ask for. Yeah, it does not get any worse than this. This is definitely the worst possible outcome. Does he have double go hard, too, to kill this 2-2? We lost a Burblefish. I forgot to attack, so we missed 1 point of damage. Yeah, that is atrocious, is how we describe that. Alright, take 3. At least we're doing okay on health. But, yeah, we definitely want it better than that. Okay, well, that's a little bit better. Yeah. Alright, well. There we go. Now we're getting started. And we can iterative another one. Perfect. Or if he gives us something better, we'll do that instead. Okay, now he should have some difficulties. A little bit. But he is clocking us fairly quick himself. But our deck is doing something now. That was a pretty lucky suit up off the top. I suppose I could have cast the other one for full, but definitely the fact that we get to bank this iterative is really strong for us. Ooh, that's also good. We like that. The downside being that he can level his Twisted Fate up potentially quickly. And I don't think... I mean, it's possible for us to... Oh, maybe we can race. I was about to say, it's possible for us to race, but unlikely. But a rummage does help that quite a bit. So what's the play here? If we take full damage, we'll take 3, 5, 7, down to 10. That's risky business. Actually, you can't swing with Twisted Fate because it'll die to this. And I will absolutely block Twisted Fate if he gives me that chance. Okay, well, we'll play this. We will play this for the red card. Deal with that keg before that does anything too crazy. Do we just have to try and race? That's not great. We'll let him go. Should he so wish. Okay. That's what I assumed he was going to do. How... Okay, he's pretty far from it right now. That's the good news. Now, if we don't block anything, we're going to take... 2, 4... is it better to go for... Okay, so we're gonna go for Pool Shark here. We need some sort of blocker. And drawing cards is good for us, too. How scared are we of Ruination?
You won't suffer long.
That's the real question. Okay, how much damage does that do? A lot. So we block here, and we go to 11. Okay. How scared are we of ruination? That is the question. It feels like the answer is kind of scared. So we do this, that drops him to 9. This is risky. This is risky. Okay. Play this. Think this is worth more. And then we force 7 damage through if he doesn't have a go hard. Right? Yeah. Well, this is the moment of truth. That is one of our better draws. Especially with his Twisted Fate that close to leveling. Ooh. Okay. He's at 5. Red card. Whew. Can he level up Twisted Fate in response? He cannot. Okay. Oh. Alright. That's big. Good chance we're not even going to use this ignition. Okay. That's scary. I will absolutely block with all 3 of these if I have to. Well, I guess I can't block that. Okay. Okay. Let's try to turbo level an Elise. Question will be, does he have a vengeance? How much damage can I take? That's another question worth asking. Yeah, I mean, this Twisted Fate isn't going to level up. It's not going to happen. Oh, man! Oh, that's so good for me. Okay, I can Ignition now. I can Ignition now, he doesn't have a response. Twisted Fate dies, but that doesn't matter. We keep our Ballistic Bot for next turn. We get to Ignition right now, drop him to 8. He has to have Vengeance, or he's dead. Just to the open attack. What's he got? Does he have the Vengeance? Or something crazier like Grasp. Grasp obviously would be the worst possible outcome. This is the best possible application of the Teemo emote. That was the slowest Vengeance play I've ever seen in my life. Alright, I don't know why it took him that long. It was his only possible option. Alright. Well, that drops him to 1. Can he draw? Oh, I should have played that first Ballistic Bot. Oops. Oops. Can I draw Burn? Can he gain life? That's technically Burn. That is technically Burn. What's he got? He has to, yeah, he has to go hard or he's dead. Okay, play Twist of Fate, red card. I suppose I could have Ignition there. That might have been the smarter play.
I'm a people person.
Alright.
You dare.
What you got? Actually, we're in reasonably good shape, aren't we? Okay, so I just have to block that if he attacks. Oh, he's trying to... Oh! Oh, there we go. Perfect. If he was trying to create Go Hard, that doesn't really work because Go Hard's a slow spell. But interesting, interesting. I mean, we will take that though. Haven't seen Go Hard in a while, but don't mind seeing it in time to beat it. Yeah, not bad. On to the next. Alright, Plaza Scouts. Interesting. This could be a problem. Sharp Sight's gonna be... It's gonna be a problem. I don't want either of these in my hand. I'll take these two, depending on what my opponent does. Okay. Fizz actually looking semi-good here, although Double Fizz is not. Okay, plays nothing, we play Fizz. Oh, wow. What a punk. See what he plays. Alright.
What's this?
If you want to waste a Sharp Sight for that. Yeah, I thought not. Oh man. That really is not what we wanted. Okay. That's not that bad. Yeah, I mean, I guess we shuffle that back in, right? And then maybe we pitch the other Fizz? Let's see what happens. Okay. That's unfortunate. Weird. Very weird. Okay. Well, good thing I didn't discard the Sphistoporo cannons, which I was thinking about doing. So, that could have been tragic. Yes! Yes! That's what we want. Still could be mediocre. Because he could have Sharp Sight. But if he doesn't, he's gonna take a chunk. Yeah, okay. Of course he does. No surprise there. If I've learned anything in the course of playing this game, it's that my opponents are always extraordinarily lucky. Well, we at least can build a little bit of a board here. And he can only have up to 2 more Sharp Sights, so... And we still have Fizz in our deck. Not a lot of Fizzes, but we do have Fizz. That is also extraordinarily frustrating. Yep. Not surprising though. This is more par for the course. What my opponent's got going on over there.
Time to get rowdy.
Yeah, I mean, better rip the Band-Aid off now, right? What do we want to do here? Nothing? Yeah, that's fine.
Can you improve perfection?
Oh, Lord. Okay. Would I rather gold card or would I rather red card for the damage? I think gold card.
Hold it, partner.
Time to start playing some flyers, I guess. Interesting. Yeah, we'll do that. Decisions. Play one of these. I think, right? I guess. Cast this. Cast this. Now we play Burblefish, or we could play Burblefish. Would I rather play Burblefish or the other Poro? I think I'd rather play the other Poro. Well, Swing of the flyers. See if we can get a little bit of damage in, or if he has another sharp sight slash single combat. Does not appear to. Now, this Twisted Fate is almost certainly dead. That's the important thing to note here. He is... What? What in good God's name is that? Yeah. We stopped playing cards now. Okay. Yep. Take the 3. Lose Twisted Fate. Play another Twisted Fate. Stun your Twisted... Or your, ridiculous thing there. Yeah, we want none of that. We want entirely none of that. Worst case scenario. I am so baffled by what is happening right now.
Dead in their tracks.
What is this game? Who is this person? Eat that? Yeah, I mean, I'm still at a life total that's fine. Just have to hope he doesn't have an answer for flyers, right? Alright, so we can play another flyer. That's not really what we wanted. Am I about to get... No, it's not worth it. It's not worth getting rid of Twisted Fate for a 1-1. I mean, that's very... That has the potential to be very lethal.
Join me if you want to live.
You're covered.
Okay. Play another flyer. Okay. I don't know what happens now. He can only kill one of these just off a single combat. So the question is, can he kill me? It doesn't really matter which one of these die. So he can't sharp sight. I think we... Yeah! Oh my lord, the one of Mind Meld steals us the win! Oh my god! And that's why you run the Mind Meld. That right there. Apparently the answer to what matchup is it good into? Plaza Scouts is the answer. Did not expect to steal a win like that. Out of nowhere. That was incredible. That was everything I wanted Mind Meld to be. Yeah. Alright, I'm a convert. I believe. Yep. Yep. Mind Meld is a card worth running. 100%. What a way to go into the wrap-up. Alright, so how do we do in our games today? So, first note, for those of you who are paying close attention, yes, I cut a game out. So, the first 2 games I played were discard aggro, back-to-back. And I did not want to do a video in which we had 4 Noxus Piltover decks in a row, 2 of which being duplicates. At least with this set that I went with, there were 3, and they were all different variants of Noxus Piltover. So I didn't want to include the second discard aggro. We lost that game, as you could probably tell by the LP. It's a really bad matchup. It's definitely a bad matchup. We lost it twice. The second one was actually even more of a shutout, to be honest. So that's why I didn't include that one. I think there's a lot more value to be gained off the first video, the one I kept, than to be gained off the second one. So that's why I did it in the order that I did it in. So where were we in the video? In the video, we're 4-1. As of filming all of those games, I was 4-2 on the deck in ranked. But I wanted to have a better ranked portfolio. This is something I want to kind of do going forward with all the on the grinds, rather than having a lot of games for the update and meta check. I mean, I still plan on doing that because I do plan to play this deck some more, and I think the win rate will go up. But I wanted to make sure I had more games for the time of this video too. So I played more since then, And so at the end of those videos, I was 4-2, which is a pretty solid result. But since then, I've gone 2-3. So, or not 2-3. I've gone 2-3. So ultimately, the deck right now is 6-5, which is a much worse score. Did not film those games, unfortunately. I wish I had, because then I could show off the Zoe Lee Sin matchup. I also played against DI Fiora and FN Ash Sejuani, or not Ash Sejuani, it was Sejuani Swain, different version. But ultimately, 6-5, 55% win rate. Obviously, one more win than loss. Not where I wanted to be, and not where I think the deck deserves to be. But the night I played it, we saw a lot of Noxus Piltover, and in the case of discard aggro, that's a very bad matchup. So a little unfortunate. Definitely planning to play more. I'm hoping that when you see an update on this in next week's meta check, that the win rate will be higher, not lower. But we'll see how that goes. Hopefully. The big problem is that I played against Zoe Lee Sin twice. And the reason for playing this deck, if you paid attention or saw my meta check from this past week, I picked this deck and Frostbite midrange as two decks to beat Lee Sin. And I lost to Zoe Lee Sin both games that I played. And they weren't particularly close. So this deck is actually very good. And if Riot finally does what they need to do and just kills Lee Sin, this deck actually could be really, really, really good. But the problem is I'm looking for a deck to beat Zoe Lee Sin, and this deck failed. Maybe I'll have something better to say by the end of next week, but as of right now, this deck doesn't succeed at what the whole point was and what the aim was to do, which was to beat Zoe Lee Sin, and it's not doing that. So that's unfortunate, and I probably will transition off this deck then if that's the case, because I just don't want to lose games to Zoe Lee Sin, and unfortunately it has very few to non-existent bad matchups. But how does this deck actually look outside of that? So obviously against other aggro decks, it struggles a bit, especially against something like discard aggro that's going to clock you the fastest. Bilgewater Burn's a little bit closer. I haven't played it from the Fizzlusive side, but I have played it 2-3 times from the Bilgewater Burn side, I think. Let me flip through my records here. 2 times. Have I only played against 2 times? I thought I played against more than that. The win rate's actually 1-1 against Fizzlusives with Bilgewater Burn, and I stomped on them one game, and then it was a nail biter, but they beat me to the punch on the second. So I think that's the decks you're going to be the most concerned about with Fizzlusives is other aggro decks. Many decks can outrace you, so that's a real concern to keep in mind. But other than that, I think we're in a pretty decent shape, because even against mid-range decks that can pressure us fast, like Plaza Scouts, the fact that our stuff is elusive and gets by a lot of their things is really, really strong. If it starts to have problems with things like Plaza Scouts, per se, you could always consider going the Aftershock to deal with Plaza so they can't kill our units so much, and that should help. But I am so tempted to go to like a second Mind Meld after those games. And it's... So you saw the one Mind Meld game. I had an even better Mind Meld game later against Fiora Shen of all decks, and we won. And it was a little bit of a nail biter. They almost won through Fiora, but we were able to kill it at 3. It had 3 kills when we killed the Fiora. That was thank God, I guess. They really were about to win that one. And if they had that Fiora, we probably were doomed. But they didn't have Fiora, and we got a Mind Meld off with 5 elusives on the board and 11 spells cast. So my opponent didn't have much of a chance in that one. Mind Meld is really good for the mid-range matchups, especially Demacia. It's definitely, it excels there. Go Hard, we saw that in the video. We saw Plaza Scouts in the video. There was another weird kind of like Turbo TF Braum thing. That was weird, but we beat that deck pretty decisively. And I lost to Sejuani Swain, and that was honestly pretty close. my opponent kind of got a little bit lucky. But I could see that being semi-problematic. It's hard to say. I've played Frostbite mid-range into Fizzlusives, and I won that, so I could see Freljord Noxus being a bad matchup for the deck, so that's not too surprising. But all in all, it seems to hold up reasonably well against most of the field. Aggro, you're going to have to really look for something aggressive or something really go wide, buy you time, and board wipe with a Twisted Fate or something. Because that's where you're going to struggle a lot. We don't have life gain either, so it's going to be hard for us to stay alive through that. If you see a lot of it, maybe Citrus Courier will be worth running just for the life gain, but I kind of doubt it. So aggro's always going to be a little bit threatening, but we're going to do pretty well in the mid-range because of the elusive quality. So it's got its pros and cons, but it's a really fun deck if you want to play Fizz. And obviously, if you haven't been able to tell by my intro and all that, I want to play Fizz. So I had to play this deck. It was just I thought long and hard about it. I was going to play Frostbite midrange originally because that deck's been around for forever and I've still never done a deck guide on it. And who knows, that might end up being next week's, but I think we're going to have a patch next week, and if they fix Lee Sin, which they really should because he's been a problem for quite a while and he's still a problem, and they should have known that when they started this patch, whether they did or not. I imagine there's going to probably be some balances in this next patch, but according to Labs, next patch is in 5 days, something like that, so it's next Tuesday, so probably going to be a patch. If there's not, or there's no balance changes, maybe I'll play Frostbite mid-range for sure, but we'll see. I just had to play this deck because this is probably the most competitive Fizz has ever been. This is probably the most competitive Fizz deck, and I actually mean that. The Targon version of Fizz was pretty strong, the Fizzlusives one, not the all-in Fizz. I played that on my channel before, but I'm talking about the one where it's elusives primarily. That deck is, fun, but it's really close to a 50% win rate, and I know that's where this Fizzlusives deck is right now, but I really expect it to have a much better win record with a few more games and maybe a little bit luckier matches where I'm not going to see discard aggro so much. Because like I said, Bilgewater Burn and probably Nightfall aggro too, definitely decisive aggro, we should be able to race. But discard aggro has always been one of the fastest and highest damage output burn decks in the game, so racing it is very hard for any aggro deck to do, and we are definitely no exception. So it's a very fun deck if you like elusives and if you like Fizz. And for long-time viewers, I love both. I love elusives, and so getting to play this deck, it really does feel kind of fun in the same way that the original elusive shell was, except now we have burn on top of it, and yeah, our stuff's a little more fragile, and we don't have the cool Windfarer's Hatchling, but Suit Up is a really fun card. It's a neat deck. It just lets you play so many things you would not see anywhere else. Mind Melds, Suit Ups, Fizz, it's phenomenal. It's a really fun deck if that sounds like the right kind of playstyle for you, but I would urge a little bit of caution that until Lee Sin actually gets hit, this deck might not be your best choice, but it can definitely hold up with most of the rest of the metagame, and it's just really fun. You should absolutely try it. So, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, or if you want to try this deck for yourself, the deck link is in the description below, as well as the deck code. And otherwise, if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more videos just like it.